and welcome to the 2022 Latinx Kidlit Book Festival. Be sure to check out our anti-harassment policy, which we'll put in the chat below. Jennifer Torres and I are going to be talking about how our favorite books and movies inspire our writing. My name is Anika Fajardo, and I am the author of the book Meet Me Halfway, which is about seventh graders Maddie Gomez and Mercedes Miller, who discover they're half-sisters and then end up going on an adventure to find their Colombian father, who they have never met, and have to figure out how to get along the way.
Hi, and I'm Jennifer Torres. I am the author of The Do-Over, and just like Meet Me Halfway, the main characters in this story are twins, Raquel and Lucinda Mendoza. The book takes place in the middle of a pandemic, and Raquel and Lucinda are stuck at home after their school gets shut down. And their divorced parents decide that it might be safer if the girls spend the lockdown at their dad's house in the country rather than in busy Los Angeles with their mom. Lucinda is devastated by this news, but Raquel, who's a little bit more take charge and bossy, thinks that this is the opportunity they've been looking for to get their parents back together if they can force them to spend the lockdown in the same house. So Lucinda reluctantly goes along with this, and everything is going great until the twins discover that Dad's new girlfriend, Sylvia, and her daughter are also staying at the ranch house. So things don't go according to plan.
So both of our books are inspired by existing stories. And so we're going to be talking about how writers draw inspiration from favorite books and movies in order to tell a new story. My book, Meet Me Halfway, is inspired by The Parent Trap, and also inspired by The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankweiler, a novel that came out a long time ago. And so I used both a film and a book to inspire my writing.
And as you might have heard in my description, The Do-Over also takes some inspiration from The Parent Trap. So we're really excited to share with you about how we drew inspiration from existing sources. And before we do that, though, we wanted to talk through The Parent Trap in case you're not familiar with this story. So there have been a couple of films on The Parent Trap. One from the original was in the 1960s. And then there was one in the 90s. And both of them turn out to have been inspired by an even older story, a German story called Lottie and Lisa. And in this story, we have two girls who meet each other for the first time at summer camp, and they're amazed that they look exactly alike. And the girls discover that not only do they look alike, they're actually long-lost twins. When they were babies, their parents separated, each took a child. And they're very different people, but they conspire together that to switch places so that each can spend time with either parent, and eventually get it into their heads that maybe they can bring their parents back together. So on the next slide, we'll talk through some definitions before we get started.
So you might have heard the word plagiarism. And plagiarism is when you take someone else's idea and present it as if it's your own. But there's a difference between plagiarism and inspiration. And so there is a way for authors to be inspired by a story without copying it exactly. So we don't want to copy a story, but we can still be inspired by it. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
And as you're creating a new story based on something that inspired you, a couple of the elements you can think about twisting or playing with or putting your own spin on are plot. And plot means the chain of interconnected events that make up a story. You could also think about changing the setting, and a setting is just where and when a story takes place. So next, Anika will share an excerpt from Meet Me Halfway.
So Meet Me Halfway is told from the 2 points of view in alternating chapters of the two characters, Maddie Gomez and Mercedes Miller. And the first excerpt is taken from the point of view of Maddie Gomez, who has just started school in a brand new school. She moved from Minnesota and now she's living in California. And on the first day, she discovers that Mercedes Miller is one of the most popular girls in school and looks just like her. And one of Maddie's new friends explains that this means that they are doppelgangers, which is a fancy word for people who look alike. And in this scene, Maddie is watching Mercedes in the lunchroom on her first day in this school. We're interrupted by a commotion from across the lunchroom. My doppelganger and her friends start singing a song I probably should know but don't. They're doing some dance that involves a lot of hip shaking and stomping. They belt out the song at the top of their lungs. They look ridiculous, but also kind of cool, like High School Musical is happening live at Poppy View Middle School. Mercedes and her gang love attention, November says, any kind. Watch. The moment he says this, a woman in a blue suit appears in the lunchroom. She strides to their table. Ladies, she says, tapping each girl on the shoulder, making them each sit. My doppelganger is the last one. Lunch period is for eating, not dancing. If I were them, I would be so embarrassed. But as soon as she's gone, the girls stand up one more time. They bow in unison, like they choreograph the whole thing. Kids around us applaud. I keep my eye on Mercedes Miller. She flips her hair and shakes her wrist so that her bracelets jangle. Her sneakers match her mint green nails. For 1 second, she glances at me.
I love that scene, Anika. I love the introduction to these characters. Can you share with us a little bit about how you pulled some inspiration from the previous sources into this scene?
Well, I love the way how in The Parent Trap, the two girls who look like they should get along because they look alike instantly hate each other. And you think the reason that they don't like each other is because they look alike. And I remember the first time I watched that movie thinking how cool it would be if I met somebody who looked like me and how I would like to be friends with them. But the more I thought about it as I was working on this story, I thought, it probably wouldn't be that cool to have somebody suddenly look just like you in your school, especially when you're a brand new student in 7th grade.
One of the things I really liked about the way you wrote that scene is that it kind of gives us a glimpse of how the twins are different. Like we see the differences in the way one twin reacts to the other. Like she's shocked that these girls are, just dancing in the middle of the cafeteria, and even more so that they're not embarrassed to have been scolded. They just take a bow and sort of soak in all the attention. So I love the way you, from the beginning, show how they're very different individuals. Did you ever think about writing that scene a different way, or having them encounter each other, I guess, for the first time in a different way?
Well, so the lunchroom scene is actually the second time they meet each other. First, they have a class together and they have to sit next to each other, and they are forced to work on the same school project together. And so the cafeteria scene lets us see them in separate places. And this scene is also written from the point of view of the other sister. So we're going to take a look at that too. So this second segment is from the point of view of Mercedes, the girl who was standing up and dancing during the lunchroom scene. And this is from her point of view, but it happens at the same exact lunchtime period. Gabby and Rebecca collapse and giggles. A juice box gets tipped over and we shriek as we escape the sticky mess. All the 7th graders turn and stare at us, which means it's time to put on a show, remind everyone how popular we are. I start humming our favorite song, and right away Gabby and Rebecca join in. We've been rehearsing a bunch of choreography during sleepovers this summer, and we're ready. We stand up and use our bags of chips as microphones. We know all the lyrics and sing in unison. Gabby and Rebecca swings her hips to the right, to the left. I'm in the middle, so I do the foot moves in and out. Na, 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 we sing. Kids around us look up from their sandwiches and laugh. The three of us coordinate our disco moves, and the lunchroom audience stomps the beat. I'm in the stars tonight, I wail into my Doritos microphone. I love the feeling of being in the spotlight. I'm about to take a big exaggerated bow when Mrs. Leeds comes marching towards us. Uh-oh, our principal does not like it when we're loud at lunch. Ladies, Mrs. Leeds said in a warning voice. Sorry, we say. I like being the center of attention, but I also like being a good student. As I'm sitting down again, I spot Maddie Gomez at the dork table, and our eyes catch for a split second. Something seems to connect us, like an invisible spider web. So in that scene, we get to see the principal. We find out it's the principal who has come in and scolded them. And we see how Mercedes is kind of keeping an eye on Maddie. And just like in the Parent Trap movies, I wanted to imagine what it'd be like to see somebody who looks like me and hate her because of that and really dislike her. And so in this scene, I imagined what it would be like for popular Mercedes Millers to be embarrassed that this new girl, Maddie Gomez, who seems like not the super cool kid, not the super popular kid. And so now she's trying to distract her friends from noticing by doing what she likes best, which is being in the spotlight. So we're going to give you a chance to do a little practice writing. You're going to try to put yourself in the character's shoes. So in the sample that I just read, from the point of view of Mercedes, she isn't happy to find somebody who looks just like her. So I want you to think about, how would you feel if someone appeared at school that looks just like your twin? You're going to take a couple minutes to brainstorm how you might feel. Do you think you would be embarrassed like Mercedes? Would you be mad like she is? Or maybe you'd be excited like I think I would be. Or maybe you would just be curious, which is really how Maddie is feeling. Write 3 to 5 sentences about how you would feel if you were in Mercedes' shoes in the lunchroom. The task will require you to really think about what it feels like to be in somebody else's shoes and to think about character. You might want to take a little time right now to pause the video and do a little bit of writing as you think about what it would be like to be in somebody else's shoes. hopefully you've had a chance to really think about what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes, to think about a scene from a different point of view. And you can always do more writing on this activity, but we're going to hear more from Jennifer and her book, The Do-Over.
Thanks, Anika. So unlike The Parent Trap, the twins in The Do-Over are not long lost. They've grown up together. Their parents are divorced, but they they know about each other and they spend a lot of time together, maybe too much time, one of the twins, Lucinda, is sort of feeling like. But that said, they are still very different people with different personalities. And so I'm going to read a short scene that I hoped would introduce readers to those two personalities and also set up how those differences will create some tension later in this story. So right before this excerpt you're about to hear, Raquel has been trying to kind of twist Lucinda's arm into joining the school newspaper club that she runs. And it's basically the only club that's still going because they can meet online while schools are closed. But Lucinda doesn't want to because she's not interested, and also she's in the middle of a workout for her ice skating. Lucinda didn't budge. Ever since last summer, when Dad moved to Lockford, 5 hours north in the slow green middle of California, Raquel had been acting like she was editor-in-chief of their lives, not just the Mirror. She made color-coded schedules, blue for Lucinda, green for their mom, and purple for herself, and emailed them first thing every morning. And she was always sneaking off of Lucinda's phone to set what she insisted were friendly reminder alarms. She is completely out of hand, Lucinda complained when Raquel tried to teach her the right way to fold bath towels. She is editing the laundry. Just try to be patient, Mom said. I think she needs to feel like there's still something she can control. But Raquel couldn't rewrite their parents' story as if it were one of her newspaper articles, just like she couldn't schedule Lucinda into the club, no matter how persistent she was. Lucinda tightened the sweatshirt she had tied around her waist. She took hold of the railing again and stretched her leg toward the sky.
I love this section, Jennifer. I love the way that we can see right away how different the sisters are, but we also get a sense of them living in the same house together and stuck together, which I think a lot of us really remember very clearly. And through all of those details of the laundry and the alarms on the phone and the schedule, we just get to see their interactions, but also get to see what their personalities are like.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun thinking about their differences and about how Lucinda for a while sort of liked that. Like, she is more conflict averse and she kind of liked having someone take charge and tell her what to do. But as they're getting older, that's starting to grate on her and she's trying to think about who she is apart from her sister.
Yeah, and I like how you can also tell that they care about each other. So that's a really nice thing to see too.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. So we can move on to another excerpt that kind of shows this tension again, but it's kind of, you can see now how it's building into a bit of a conflict. So in The Parent Trap, in both movies, the twins have to play pranks to try to drive away their dad's new girlfriend because they want their parents to get back together. So in this story, the twins do the same thing, but because of the pandemic setting and because the girlfriend Sylvia is like not a wicked witch, she's actually kind of nice, this scene kind of takes on a new meaning. So in this section, Sylvia, the girlfriend, has left a load of laundry out, and Raquel decides that they should make DIY face masks out of it, obviously. Lucinda is completely terrified of this idea and wishes her sister would just drop it. Lucinda squeezed her eyes shut as Raquel held the scissors against the leopard print blouse. I can't watch. She heard the blade slice through the fabric, heard the cheers that erupted from the screen. She opened her eyes again just in time to see Raquel lift the blouse up to the camera and show the rectangle-shaped hole in the back. Raquel offered her the scissors. Try it. It's so satisfying. Come on, Lucinda, go for it, Alice urged. Yeah, Lucinda, Mira said. Do the stripes. Lucinda shook her head and turned away. Cut, 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 the faces on the screen chanted. Fine, just stop, okay? Lucinda almost never yelled. The computer went silent. She turned to Raquel. You too. If I do this, can we just stop? Raquel nodded, so Lucinda picked up the scissors. Her sister had been right. Something about the way the fabric gave a soft crunch as the scissors cut through felt like tearing into all the disappointment and confusion and uncertainty of the past 2 months. When she finished, the whole club cheered. So if we go on to the next slide, we have a little writing activity for you to try changing the setting. So as I said, in the Parent Trap films, there are scenes in which the twins play pranks to scare off Dad's new girlfriend. And I think in both films involve like a terrible camping trip where they do lots of awful things to the poor girlfriend. But in this story, we have a pandemic setting and some different characters. So having heard that short excerpt about a prank that the twins have pulled on Sylvia, I would love for you to first brainstorm what are some different settings this story could take place in, and then what would a prank look like in one of those settings. So what if this story were, instead of being set in a pandemic, set on a pirate ship? What kind of pranks would the twins pull then? Or if instead of just kind of a normal family who runs a fruit stand, this was a family of circus performers, what would the pranks look like? So teachers, you can pause here and allow your class a few minutes of free writing time to think about putting this scene in a new setting. Okay, I hope you had lots of fun dreaming up some new settings and some new pranks for the twins in your Inspired by the Parent Trap story.
So as you can see, that both of our books take older stories and movies, and they're just one of the places that writers can find inspiration. And so we might take familiar characters and settings or plots and give them our own unique twist, and in doing so, create new stories and new meanings. So both Jennifer and I took some of the ideas of an existing story and we twisted them a little bit in order to tell a new story. So the next thing that we're going to leave you with is a little bit more complex writing prompt for you to write your own twist on a story. Now, you're going to do a little brainstorming first and write a list of 3 of your favorite books or movies. This should be pretty easy to come up with your favorite books and movies. These are probably books and movies that you know really well, too. After you've done the brainstorming, you're going to think about which one you want to choose to put a twist on. Next, you want to write down the main character, the setting, and pick a memorable scene from that book or movie that you chose. This is probably going to be something that you know pretty well. In order to write a new scene, you're going to keep 2 of those 3 items, the character, the setting, or the scene, and twist 1. In other words, choose 2 elements, keep 1 to twist. What new story can you tell?
So to help you think through this, I have just a very short example. You might be familiar with the story of Cinderella. So if I were using Cinderella as my inspiration story, I would write down the main character, which is Cinderella, who is a mistreated daughter. Then B, I would write down the setting, and the setting is a fairy tale village. And C, a memorable scene might be when Cinderella rushes out of the ball as the clock is striking midnight and she leaves a glass slipper behind. Now I'm going to keep 2 of those elements and twist 1. So let's say I kept the character and the scene. So now I would choose a new setting. How would this scene play out if instead of a palace or a fairy tale village, the story were set in space or at a zoo? What would prompt Cinderella to leave? What would she leave behind? Or I could instead keep the scene and the setting and twist the character. So what would this scene look like if it was told from someone else's perspective? What if we heard this scene from the point of view of the chef who worked really hard to prepare a feast for the ball, but no one paid any attention to the food? They were also focused on Cinderella, who left early. Or I could keep the character and the setting and twist the scene. So could I write a scene that doesn't appear in the original story? Maybe it takes place 10 years after the royal ball. Is Cinderella feeling good about her choices still? Or could I write a scene in which Cinderella decides she's not going to go to the ball at all? So we invite you to think about your own favorite stories and think about how you can play with some of the elements, give it your own perspective, tell that story from your heart to create a new story with new meanings. And I hope that we're able to hear some of them. I am excited about this project.
And you're going to be able to use your imagination and also lean on things that you already know really well. So I know that you're going to be able to come up with a great story with a great twist. So again, we can think about how hopefully you've been able to see how writers use existing stories and movies and books in order to inspire their own writing and write new stories, and really find a new way to tell stories. And so both Jennifer and I have been able to tell new stories based on one movie that we both must have really liked as kids. So Meet Me Halfway was mine.
And mine is The Do-Over.
So thank you so much for coming to our session. I hope that this was inspiring you to do some writing of your own. For more craft resources, check out the rest of the craft panels at this year's festival, as well as our mini craft lessons on the educator page of the festival website. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.